Latinx, a person of Latin American origin or descent, used as a gender-neutral or non-binary alternative to Latino or Latina.
Latinx, we're black, we're brown, we're white. We're immigrants, we break binaries and cross borders. We speak all languages and are of all abilities, faiths, spiritualities, sizes, gender identities, sexual orientations, and documentation statuses, and we're here to stay.
I'm Alejandra.
I'm Ana.
This is Latinx Mental Health Podcast, where we talk to therapists, researchers, artists, activists, and students about their experiences in the intersections of mental health and Latinx identity. In each interview, we aim to connect through our voices, our struggles, and our triumphs, as we sample a different herbal tea, just like Abuela used to make.
This is the last episode of the Latinx Mental Health Podcast. In this episode, Ale and I talk memories and reflections on making the podcast and share our exciting new ventures. We want to thank all of you who have been on this journey with us and hope to cross paths again soon.
The Latinx Mental Health Podcast is not a substitute for professional mental health care. We encourage you to seek resources and support in your community.
All right. Hi, Ale.
Hi, it's good to see you.
I know, you too. Yeah.
It's been so long since we've done this.
I know. It feels good.
It does feel good.
Yeah. And it's kind of cool. This is like a closing of one chapter and opening of another chapter episode. So it's kind of nice to be able to return to this format for it.
Yeah, and we've been trying to do this forever. We've been talking about it forever, and I'm glad it happened in this way. It feels like it happened organically, and like things came together when they needed to come together.
Exactly. Yes, which I love. And I feel like that's one thing we're going to reflect on the podcast today, but I feel like that's one thing we've always been really good at is being patient with when things should happen that works for both of us. So that's really cool. Yeah. Okay, so this is the last podcast episode. And I think we wanted to just reflect a little bit on our experiences and then also talk about our new projects and businesses and kind of what we're doing now. So I will start by asking you about the podcast, and I will ask you, what was your favorite thing about making the Latinx Mental Health Podcast?
My favorite thing about making the Latinx Mental Health Podcast, I think it was working with you and Leo. It was just like a harebrained idea in my mind. And then to be able to it's just so perfect that we're going to be talking about your business because it's like, so you, like the reason this podcast happened was because you were able to like take an idea and really like kind of map out like this is how we can do that, because I'm definitely somebody who just like spouts ideas and then like walks away. And so I think working in a team and as a group and being able to spend time with you all, that was definitely my favorite part. And then my other favorite part was that we got to talk to so many cool people.
Yeah.
Especially when when we were recording in person at my house, like to have people come into my home and drink tea with us. It was really special and sweet.
It was so cozy. I know. I still think about just the vibe of that room, how it was painted and the art and the table. And it was just the coziest vibe ever. And I feel like you could hear that in the podcast. And it definitely made sense that our podcast had more trouble transitioning virtually because so much of it was based on that intimate connection. Yeah, that's definitely my answer too. Just how we got to interact with each other and with other people and the vibe of it. And it was just really, it was community building, but it was also like just so cozy. I don't know another word for it. It was so cozy. But you know what I was thinking about actually, that is one of my other favorite things about doing a podcast, also related to community, was the one fundraiser we did in person.
That's right. Oh my God, I hadn't thought of that.
I know. It just hit me the other day and I was like, that was actually the coolest thing. We had like music, and it was at Lichas Cantina, and like a bunch of people came out. We made t-shirts. I still have a bag. Like
Yeah.
the logo that was made by Kate from the Institute was so beautiful, and it was so easy to just put it on anything and sell it because it's gorgeous. So I was just remembering like the vibe of that too. The community feeling was just lovely, and kind of getting to feel everybody in person when a podcast is like you're talking in a small group and other people are listening. It was a really cool experience.
Yeah. Oh my God. I had not even thought about the fundraiser. I still save all of my pill bottles. And I was like, what am I going to use them? But when we made the little tea
Yes.
pill bottles,
For anyone who wasn't there, Ale has like prescription pill bottles saved that we made labels for, like stickers, and then Ale made two different tea like concoctions, like dried combinations, and then we sold them with these cute little like tags and everything as tea, and it was like mental health related.
yeah.
Very
That was
cool. Yeah, so anyway, that was one of my favorite things.
Yeah, yeah, and as you're saying that, it does make sense that we had so much trouble transitioning during the pandemic, and I can't help try not to too much, but wonder like, oh, I wonder what would have happened if
I
there hadn't
know
been a pandemic, but there was. So,
there was
um,
mixed bag that it was.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then I will ask the next question.
Okay. Yes.
What did you learn from making the podcast?
What did I learn? I feel like I learned a lot of things. Um, I learned that, well, it was from what you're saying too, it was another example where I learned that I can create something from an idea and make it a reality, which is one of my favorite things to do. And it was at the time probably the most creative thing I was doing, which is funny because it was still very much mostly mental health social worky,
Mhm.
but it was really nice to like have something creative. I learned that it's a lot of work to edit and produce a podcast because Leo and I were doing that end of things, and it was a lot of work. And so that was something that we learned. Um, and I also just learned from all of our guests. Like I would not, I don't think, have gone as quickly into learning about like the health at every size, like body liberation movement, and learning even from your dad and like from all these different guests and their perspectives. It was just really cool because it was an intimate look into what they were working on. Like we really went in depth with these long form interviews. And I think that really shaped a lot of how I was thinking about things like activism and creativity and
Mhm.
human rights and all the different topics that we touched on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything that you feel like stands out that you learned?
Yeah, I mean, definitely all of those things, though I wasn't on the producing side, so I did not learn that, fortunately and unfortunately. Um, but I think the other thing I learned was how to have like a successful collaboration with somebody, because I think
Mm,
you and I did a really good job of communicating with one another. And there were definitely points where it was like, it wasn't even like, there was never any like fights or big disagreements, but sometimes where it was just like, this thing isn't working for me, but it
yeah.
is working for you. Or, like we were just able to, I think, talk it out in a way that felt really safe and
Mm,
comfortable. Like I felt that I could put boundaries when I needed to, and I hope that you felt the same. And that's possible in a collaboration, because I think so many of the examples I've seen from organizing and like
yeah.
groups is that a lot of like, and conflict, we need conflict, but conflict that like ends relationships.
Like drama, conflict.
Yeah, and that there wasn't any of that. Like we communicated well, and
Yeah.
it's something I hope to take to future collaborations.
I love that. I definitely felt that way too. And I think it's really interesting too. People talk about like starting projects with your friend. And we were friends first before we made the podcast. And I think that we also got to experience how you can do like
Mhm.
projects together and things like that when you're friends and maintain both relationships. And then like as we're closing out the podcast, we're still going to be friends and we're still
Yeah.
probably going to collaborate professionally in other ways too. And that's really cool.
Yeah. And we had a question about like advice, like what advice would we give? And so if I can jump to that just a
Do
little bit,
it.
I think something that I would advise is that if you are going to work with your friends, if you are going to work in a group, to talk about what conflict is going to look like before you start.
Yeah.
Like to talk about like if we don't agree about something or if something isn't working for me, what language are we going to use to talk about it? Because I think that's what really set us up for success, because it's like I can say anything to you, given like the parameters that we've already set, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah. No,
Even
I
if
agree with
I
that.
agree. Yeah.
I think that's great advice. I think also moving to that topic, clarifying roles at the beginning, like who's going to be in charge of which parts. Not that they can't change over time, but just like editing, producing is something that I learned more about and the time it would take. There's social media, there's coming up with questions, there's organizing certain things, depending on what you're doing on your podcast. So I think we did a good job of like also splitting tasks, like who's going to email the guests we're interviewing and who's going to come up with questions. Like, I feel like we were communicating about that the whole time, but it would be really easy maybe for someone to feel like they're doing more work than they want to, or that it's uneven, or that they would rather do something different. And that could become, I think, really challenging.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. But we had it set up so it's like if you felt that way, you could
yes.
say,
You say
hey,
something.
yeah,
Yes. And
yeah.
also do a podcast on something you're really interested in. Because I feel like when you're starting, you're like, oh, yeah, I have ideas. But then you're trying to like come up with ideas for years in a row. And so
Mhm.
I think if you have something for us, it was a pretty broad topic. And then there's so many people we wanted to talk to about it. But
Mhm.
depending on what your topic is, I think just something you're really interested in and then allow it to morph over time. That's something I'm really thinking about right now in all my projects is not feeling like I have to be beholden to one specific thing. If we all change and what we're interested in changes. So like being open to things morphing over time so you don't get in a rut or burnt out with what you're doing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. We learned so much.
Mhm.
Um Okay, what interview that we did stands out to you most and why?
Ooh, what honestly, I think Krista's
Mm,
interview comes to mind, and it was rough because, right, I mean, the benefit of going virtual is that she was in LA and we were here, and
yes,
so it actually that worked in our favor because otherwise we wouldn't have had the interview. But it
yes,
was, I think, our last or second to last interview because, like, yeah, like really, I think the magic of what we were doing was about like being together.
yes,
But that interview, funnily enough, was, I think, one of my favorites, because, well, one, Krista's just adorable,
yes.
uh, and funny, but um, I still think about it a lot, and I'm wondering if you have thought about it since, given what, some of the stuff you're working on, but in terms of creativity and in terms of like being okay with the process of it,
Mhm.
right? Rather than like thinking of outcomes before starting something.
Yeah,
To really be with the process, to be okay with producing a, like, I think she called it a turd.
yeah.
Like, she's like, you can, you're gonna make turds,
Yes,
and can
yes,
you enjoy that? Can you be proud of it? And that
yes.
for me is like something I think of almost every day at this point.
Mhm.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I feel like again, I'm really not copying you on purpose, but that would have probably been my answer too. I do have a couple like thoughts about other episodes I'll share, but no, hers really stood out to me in part because I think the pandemic was a good time, not just for me, but a lot of people to be curious about why we were doing what we were doing and if there were creative dreams we hadn't explored and that kind of thing that I've since gone down the rabbit hole of like so much more. And she talked about the artist way, which I hadn't heard of and like now have done. I'm in my fourth
Oh,
time
I
doing
didn't
it.
realize that that was where you had first heard about the artist
I
way.
think that's where I first heard about it.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah, so that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And even the cool thing about editing a podcast is you don't just hear what the person is saying when you're interviewing them. You also hear it like a lot over and over again to get all the cuts right, of like somebody coughed and you just don't want people to hear that. So you're kind of going through. So I feel like I really got to kind of take in everything, and Leo did too, everything that everyone said, because I would do kind of the first pass of editing and Leo would do the final cleaning because he knows all the audio stuff. And so, yeah, I really think that. And I will also say the other interview we did virtually was with Chris. So we had Krista and Chris, and both of them talked about creativity. And he said a lot of things that were in a way very similar, right? Like we're in a way like very aligned with the artist way, even though that's not how he was framing it. And I think both of them kind of really sparked more interest in like exploring that for myself, that like I said, I since have done more. Other highlights, I feel like Eva's interview always stands out as a really good one. And for a very long time afterwards, she has this great part of her interview where she kind of ends it by saying, "Will you walk with me?" And for like years afterwards, whenever Leo and I wanted the other one to do something, like, I don't know, even just go get pizza and the other person wasn't like for sure about it, we'd be like, "Will you walk with me?"
I love
So it
that.
like really stayed for a
Yeah.
while. Strong impact. And also I just love Eva. So yeah, that one stands out a lot. And like Nethery's stands out a lot to me too. Just everything about Hayes and just like Nethery's personality in general too. So yeah, those are some of the ones that really stood out.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Oh, oh gosh, now I don't have it at the top of my head. Where was I remember when we did the episode about the immigration, the immigration crisis of
Yes, like the
yes,
special episode. Yes.
yes. That for me was I really enjoyed playing with the music in that episode. Like that felt like a place where I could kind of like stretch my own creativity.
Yes.
I guess that's just like that's been the big theme that I think keeps coming back around, right? Is creativity, making. And I think we both came out, you in a very explicit way, right, with the work that you're about to do. But I think even for me in my personal life, talking about creativity over and over and over again, listening to different people talk about it, has really made a big difference in my life and how I cope with things and how I think about things.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. I think that's a perfect transition to maybe talking about what we are doing now. And part of why we're transitioning from the podcast, as you said, is, because it doesn't quite work as well in this format, and a lot of things have happened since, the pandemic. But the other thing is we're both kind of in new exciting phases in our lives. So do you want to tell the people what you're doing?
Yeah, so I finally graduated from grad school. It took 5 short years. And I like to always add that in to remind people that like just you got to go at your own pace.
Yes.
It's easy to compare, because I thought I was never going to finish. And even like staff at the UT School of Social Work would be like, "You're still here?" I'm like, yes, I am still here.
Dude.
I am still here. But now I graduated, and I got my LMSW, and I'm working at a group private practice. I'm still getting my hours, so I'm under supervision. Have a few more months left of that, but I think my future at this point is looking more like the private practice sector route of the social work career.
Nice. What kind of clients are you seeing?
Yeah, so I work, immigration is still a big part of the work that I do. So I've actually started working with a lot of folks who are DACA recipients, anybody with any sort of like immigration background or story or history, first gen folks, chronic illness and disability justice are still also a big part of my work. I have a process group that meets every other week and is ongoing for young adults living with chronic illness. I also see individuals with disabilities and chronic illness, depression, anxiety, lots of primarily all of my clients are POC, queer, work with a lot of queer folks. And so that's who I see individually. I'm also starting to do immigration evaluations. So working with immigration attorneys to do those evaluations for asylum and U visas, et cetera, those packets. And I'm hoping also to develop a course for maybe UT on working with immigrant populations, because that course does not currently exist at UT. So teaching is on the horizon. I've been giving talks on working with immigrant populations, something called Ulysses syndrome, and trying to just do more of the teaching and the talking about how this work is political work, and how we can help people by becoming more politically engaged.
I love that. I'm so excited. I think this is such a cool blending of everything you're interested in and all your skills, and that you're not boxing yourself into like one thing either, that you're getting to kind of experience a lot of different ways of like working with people. So that's really cool.
Yeah. I'm really, I hadn't have thought, like, just if you had asked me a few years ago, I don't think I would ever have thought that this was what I would be doing.
Yeah.
But here I am, and it's not so bad.
Yeah. No, I feel like, yeah, you might not have thought of it, but it also like makes so much sense for you.
It does
Like
make
it should fit. Like it's
Yeah.
lovely. Yeah. Okay. How would people find you if they're listening to this and they're like, oh my God, that sounds like the perfect therapist. I cannot wait to work with Ale. How would they?
Yeah. So you can email me at alejandra@centralaustinpsychotherapy.com. If you Google my name, Alejandra Spector, I'll pop up on that website, on Inclusive Therapist. But really, email is probably the best way to get in touch with me. So it's alejandra@centralaustinpsychotherapy.com. But go ahead and Google me too. I also have an Instagram that I am chaotically running, and it's called A Crip Therapist. So
Awesome.
that's where you can reach me.
Yay.
What about you?
What about me? Well, so I was working at Girasol, the program that I started back in 2018, based off of work I started in 2016. And we transitioned virtually, which actually went really well. And I ended up leaving that position last year, 2022, in September, and taking time away from working. So I'm finally practicing all the things I was preaching to people about, like, you should rest, you should do creative stuff, etc., etc. Like, I'm doing what I used to say other people should do. So it was lovely to take time away. I planned about 6 months away from working, and we budgeted and made that happen, which I describe as a very beautiful gift you can give to yourself if you can take any amount of time away from working. I think it's very, very nourishing. And last year also, before I left my job, actually, I did do The Artist's Way, which is a book by Julia Cameron about recovering your creativity. And I did it alongside a friend who's also a social worker and creative person. And we actually did it, loved it so much, we immediately did it again. So we did it twice through before I even left my job. And I think that was amazing because I got to enter my time off from working with a little bit of like resourced feelings around creativity and also rest, which I always shout out the NAP ministry for helping me unlearn all the things about rest and capitalism and all the things that make us, just like grind too hard. Capitalism, white supremacy, patriarchy, all the things. So I actually did rest in my time off, and I gave myself time where I didn't have to do anything. And then I gave myself time to be more intentionally creative. So I have been working on a couple musicals I started writing in high school that I dropped, as well as a new one, working on music albums, writing a couple YA novels, painting for the first time, just like anything I can get my hands on. I'm doing all the things. And I have really been enjoying that. So as I was coming back into money is still a thing, I need to make money, I kind of figured out that I wanted to be able to combine all of myself into this better than I had in the past. And so thus was born Vidina Visions Consulting. So Vidina is my middle name, and it's from the Canary Islands where my dad is from. And I really want to bring together all my different skills and talents. And so, like you mentioned, one of the things that I'm doing with this is consulting with individuals and organizations about their ideas and bringing ideas to life. So, that could look like an idea for a project, business, nonprofit, or initiative, or something within your existing work. It can also look like group brainstorming sessions I can facilitate, or strategic planning that I can facilitate for organizations. So that's one bucket. Another bucket is mental health representation consulting. So if you have a book or movie or TV show or anything you're working on creatively and you're representing mental health themes or therapy, then I can consult to make it be a sensitive and accurate portrayal without losing any of the dramatic or comedic effects. And then last but not least, the artist way. I'm now doing it a fourth time through. You can follow my journey on Instagram as I do it on my business Instagram at Vidina Visions Consulting. And I will soon be hosting groups as well for people to do the artist way in a supportive little community together. So look out for that. And I've been sharing my art on my other Instagram at Vidina Visions Art. And my website for my business is vidinavisionsconsulting.com.
Nice. Very busy.
Well, sort of, right? Because
Yeah.
as I feel like I always sound busier than I am.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. So I truly like
Mhm.
have worked to incorporate balance with rest and what I'm doing. And so one of the things, for example, is to start transitioning from not working into working again. I didn't want to go from 0 hours to 40 hours. So
Yeah.
my business hours are Mondays and Tuesdays. That's it. And
Nice.
then Wednesday through Friday, I work on my creative projects, and I
Mhm.
also incorporate rest throughout the week. So just to say, like, I will let y'all know how it goes, right? Come see me. It's fun. But I feel like being able to also practice what I preach around boundaries and like prioritizing all the different interests and around creating like a sustainable business plan for myself has been an important part of this process as well.
Yeah. And I was a client.
You were a client. You were my first client because you
Oh,
came
was
in
I?
week one. Yeah,
Yeah, I
you
was
were
like, I
like the
need
first day.
because I know she's good. I can vouch. If you liked this podcast,
Mm,
then work with Anna
yeah,
because
come hang out.
I, uh, m- I think I'm creative. I'm quick
Yes.
with my brain, but
Yeah.
also it gets away from me pretty quickly. So
Too quick.
yeah, it gets away from me a little too quickly. And so if you're like me and you have a lot of ideas and you actually want them to come to fruition, it's just really helpful to have somebody who can kind of anchor. Like I feel like that's how
Mm,
I thought about you in the podcast, was like an anchor.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
well, that's a very nice endorsement. Not at all biased from my friend here.
No, not at
But
all.
no, but yes. I have individual consulting, org consulting, um, and I have 15-minute get to know me sessions that are free available too. If you just want to come see if it'd be a good fit, we can chat about what you need. So I'm here.
Yeah. Oh, I also have like 15-minute
Yes.
consultations for free if you want to see if we're a good fit.
Love it. Love
Yeah.
it. I
Mhm.
am so excited for both of us to be entering. I feel like everyone's talking about eras, so I don't know exactly
Oh
what
yeah.
eras we're entering, right? But we are, I feel like we are entering a new era, right? Where we're trying new things, we're getting to like explore a lot of different varied interests in different ways, and just getting to be like cool business women.
Yeah.
Any
Yeah.
final like thoughts or reflections or things?
Yeah, do you have any final thoughts?
I think I'm just feeling nostalgic
Yeah.
because it was a really nice time, I think, and it was this creative outlet during a time when I was not letting myself be creative in a lot of other ways. So
Yeah.
very grateful for that too.
Yeah. I think in some ways, like I know that that was a period when I had the idea was probably one of the worst periods of my life
Yeah.
when the idea came to me. And I think maybe that's another like something to think about, if you're kind of in that rough place is, and that's maybe this is where we can tie this with a bow. I don't know, we'll see.
Mm,
But we've talked so much today about creativity, about how important it is, about making something. And so I think for me, what was beautiful about this project and what was beautiful about being able to work with people who saw me and cared about me was that the idea for me came at a time when I was just really sick and I was having a really hard time. It was probably, yeah, one of the worst periods
yeah.
of my life. And from that period, being able to think about making something and being able to think about giving something of myself and doing something with that pain was
Mm,
really cathartic, was really therapeutic. And I think we made something beautiful and I'm really proud of it. And I'm glad I got to do it with you. And I'm glad it's always gonna be there, right? Like, I think that's how,
yeah.
yeah, these things work, right? Like,
Until the internet ends one day.
yeah. So it's something that we're always gonna be able to like look back
Yeah.
on and have, and we made it together and it was
Yeah.
really special. And I'm really, yeah, nostalgic as well. I'm really grateful. And I hope if you're listening or watching this that you got something and learned something with us.
Yeah. Go back and check out all of our
Mhm.
old episodes if you haven't listened before, and come with us on our new journeys. Um, and thanks to everyone who listened too and joined on Facebook and interacted and came to the in-person fundraiser, and having some of that feedback and community and people being excited about it was also like really cool for us, I think, because it's one thing to take an idea and make it a reality, and it's another thing to be able to have some sense of an impact from that too. So those sort of bands of community, like you and I, and then you and I and Leo, like got to have this lovely experience, and then our guests, and then beyond that, like there was community outside of that as well. And there's Paloma.
And there's
We
Paloma.
almost made it.
I know,
No,
I'm
but she's like,
really
don't forget about me. Paloma was the podcast mascot. So
excited.
very important.
Yeah, yeah, and poor Paloma, she was attacked a couple months ago. She's kind of going through a hard time right now, so we're attending to her trauma.
Yeah, we'll all send her healing thoughts for
Yeah.
sure. Aw. Well, I am really glad we did this. I'm really glad we got to reflect and share about what we're doing now. And I just am very grateful for you.
I'm grateful for you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Latinx Mental Health Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at LatinxMHPod, find us on Facebook and YouTube, and subscribe everywhere you listen to podcasts.
Hasta la próxima!